Tarika, since you were absent so many days, you can start reading today.
Okay, Rangaja.
Okay.
The fact is that when we have reached the cult of absolute ethical qualities and erected the categorical imperative of an ideal law, we have not come to the end of our search or touched the truth that delivers. There is, no doubt, something here that helps us to rise beyond limitation by the physical and vital man in us, an insistence that overpasses the individual and collective needs and desires of a humanity still bound to the living mud of matter in which it took its roots, an aspiration that helps to develop the mental and moral being in us. This new sublimating element has been therefore an acquisition of great importance. Its workings have marked a considerable step forward in the difficult evolution of terrestrial nature. And behind the inadequacy of these ethical conceptions, something too is concealed that does attach to a supreme truth. There is here the glimmer of a light and power that are part of a yet unreached divine nature. But the mental idea of these things is not that light, and the moral formulation of them is not that power. These are only representative constructions of the mind that cannot embody the divine spirit, which they vainly endeavor to imprison in their categorical formulas. Beyond the mental and moral being in us is a greater divine being that is spiritual and supramental. For it is only through a large spiritual plane where the mind's formulas dissolve in a white flame of direct inner experience that we can reach beyond mind and pass from its constructions to the vastness and freedom of the supramental realities. There alone can we touch the harmony of the divine powers that are poorly misrepresented to our mind or framed into a false figure by the conflicting or wavering elements of the moral law. There alone, the unification of the transformed vital and physical and the illumined mental man becomes possible in that supramental spirit, which is at once the secret source and goal of our mind and life and body. There alone is there any possibility of an absolute justice, love, and right, far other than that which we imagine, at one with each other in the light of a supreme divine knowledge. There alone can there be a reconciliation of the conflict between our members.
Okay, a very interesting para. And note the refrain, the constant hammering on there alone, there alone, there alone. Okay, so where is the there alone? 4 times. Okay, and that is it. There alone is a supermind, where is the perfect, absolute justice, love, and love. So we'll go back to the dramatic element in his prose. Huh? There alone, there alone, there alone, there alone. 4 times. So we go back to what he's saying. I just point out a few things of the language. Okay? So it's very interesting to see how he uses language. This is so important because when you are reading on your own, when you come across those words, you know immediately you can completely associate those words with the actual planes of consciousness that he's talking about. That is the usefulness of looking at the language. Okay? And also the quality of prose. We know about the quality of poetry, but the quality of prose also is fantastic. And clarity, tremendous clarity. Now, I read each sentence. The fact is that when we have reached the cult of absolute ethical qualities and erected means constructed. That also is interesting. What is meant by construction? And erected the categorical imperative of an ideal law, we have not come to the end of our search or touched the truth that delivers. So I'll go backwards. What is the truth that delivers? The knowledge that the divine is the perfect. And if you know the divine, then you are delivered. Delivered from what? Delivered from ignorance, delivered from suffering, delivered from pain and ignorance and ego. All these things you are delivered from. Okay. And what is the truth? The supramental. There alone, there alone, there alone is it. In the spiritual planes of consciousness also there is a deliverance, but only a partial deliverance, not the full deliverance. Okay. And he's saying, we come to the end of our search. So what is the search? We are searching for the truth that makes us free, that delivers us. Okay. And that truth is not the moral, ethical qualities. That's what he's saying. The fact is that when we have reached the cult of absolute ethical qualities, absolute justice, absolute, don't tell lies, don't kill anybody, don't hurt anybody, okay? Be controlled, obey the your social laws, obey your family, parents. These are all moral laws which are there, okay? And we have to subscribe to them. But we have subscribed fully also. The journey to the truth is not ended. Morality is very good. It is very good for those who are not developed, as we will tell you later on. And it's a very important step in the evolution from the lowest level to the highest level. But morality is not the highest level at all. It is highest in the mind region at level 1. It's the highest. There's no doubt about it. Okay? But we have to go beyond that into the level 2, which is the spiritual planes of consciousness, where the mind does not hold anymore and is not applicable. You go beyond the mind. Okay? So with this background, you see in the sentence now, the fact is that when we have reached the cult of absolute ethical qualities, okay, and erected the categorical imperative of an ideal law, we have used the word erected, okay, because when the mind is using, it is constructive. Okay. Now it's interesting because all that is constructed and erected in the physical world must have an end. It has a beginning and an end. So all the ideas that your mind is being able to create, they are only time bound. A time will come when you will be able to go beyond them. They will be destroyed. We know many things are there, even in we are changing our ideas. So sometimes. So this is what I mean by construction. And also note interestingly that when you think of something, you are actually constructing, the idea is constructed in your mind with the mental substance. Just as I keep insisting on this because it's not something abstract. Even the divine is substance, but very subtle substance. Okay, this is an idea that I found very surprising, and so that's why I keep on hammering on it. Okay, even the divine is substance. Okay, but a pure substance and absolutely subtlest substance. So, when you are thinking, you are actually constructing your ideas with your mental substance. When you are emoting, when you are having emotions, you are having construction of the vital substance. These are all substances and they have forms. If you are clairvoyant, you will be able to see these forms. You will be able to see jealousy. You will be able to see love. You will be able to see envy. You will be able to see compassion. You will be able to see it. Okay? The colors will indicate you. Okay? So that's what he's saying here. But morality is not the highest. I go to the next sentence. There is no doubt something here. Now he is using there and here he is using. So here means in morality. Something here that helps us to rise beyond limitation by the physical and vital man in us. So morality is very good because when you are a physical man, you are almost an animal. Why almost? You are an animal. And vital man, you are slightly better off. You are slightly more. Okay? But still, there is no morality is not there in the vital man nor in the physical man. So morality is only mind. So you are naturally superior to the physical and the vital man. The physical man is the aborigine. Okay? The one who is just come up from the animal level. Those who study anthropology, they know, they have even given names to these humans which is just coming out of the animal stage. But the physical and vital man in us. And even when you have become mental man, there is a physical man in you. Okay? The physical man's characteristics are there in you. There is jealousy, there is attraction, all these things are there. Vital man also. But they are at a lower level and you are using your mind. But those other things also are not absent. They are very much there in you. Okay? An insistence that overpasses the individual and collective needs and desires of a humanity still bound to the living mud of matter in which it took its roots, an aspiration that helps to develop the mental and moral being in us. So he's saying that morality is an aspiration that is asking you, that is allowing you to go a little above. Above what? The physical and vital man. And it's an insistence. It insists that you become better than a physical man or a vital man. The individual and collective needs, that is level 1. Remember the first law of conduct, level 1. Individual needs and collective needs and desires. They are to be, they are allowed and they are to be appreciated, and you have to understand their need when there is a humanity which is at the physical level. And it goes on to the social law, and the moral law is the third one. Of a humanity still bound to the living mud. Now look at that. The suggestion is that your body is just mud. It happens to live, but it's just mud. It doesn't respond to your emotions. It does not respond to your ideals. It's a mud of matter in which it took its roots. Okay? You have come from matter. Your body is in matter. An aspiration, that's a morality, an aspiration that helps to develop mental and moral being in us. This new sublimating element. The new sublimating element, again, the morality is talking about. It sublimates you. In other words, it makes you climb higher than the physical man and the vital man. Okay? It goes to the sublimating element, has been therefore an acquisition of great importance. So Sri although he is going to say that morality is not applicable in the spiritual world, yet he says that if you look at the lower, it's a great achievement to be moral. Okay? But if you look above, it's not that important. It depends. Everything is relative in the world. Its workings, whose workings? Morality's workings, have marked a considerable step forward in the difficult evolution of terrestrial nature. So it gives a clear idea that mind is now the dominating factor, trying to improve things with the mind. Certainly it can succeed to a certain extent, but not the full way. And behind the inadequacy of these ethical conceptions, in the previous paras, he has described very clearly what these inadequacies are. He has told you that absolute truth, you think of absolute truth, absolute justice, but they are not the right constructions in the mind, they are not the right things. It does not correspond to absolute truth and absolute justice. Why? That also is explained to you. Okay? Because in the physical world, there are dualities. And to every ideal that you can think of, there is an equal and opposite ideal which is also valid. Just I'm repeating what I said the other day. We are just repeating just to remind you that if there is for instance, if there is discipline, which is very necessary in us. Okay, I give the example of discipline, easy to understand. Discipline is very necessary, and yet it is the opposite of freedom. Because the moment you make rules, you are restricting your freedom. But freedom also is necessary. That's one thing. Okay. Then there are so many other things. Is the individual more important or is the collectivity more important? Both are important. And yet there is a conflict between them. So these dualities are throwing up all sorts of things in the physical world which are opposites. Okay? For instance, kindness is very good. But are you going to be kind to everybody? Sometimes you will be very strict. almost bordering on cruelty, looking like cruelty. I'm not using the word cruelty because that's certainly wrong, but cruelty, mild cruelty can be strictness, and strictness is necessary. So these are the opposites. That's why Sri is saying all your moral ideals constructed by the mind are not the final thing. They are not. They are imperfect. And he goes one step further, if you remember, in the previous paragraph. He says, nature will not allow it. Nature will not allow your mental constructions to become successful because they are imperfect. Nature is going towards perfection and will not allow that. In other words, if some people are kind, nature will see to it that some people also are cruel. That's the nature of the dualities here. Okay. I now go to the next sentence. There is here, again he is using the word here in morality, the glimmer of a light and power that are part of a yet unreached divine nature. So, morality insists on truth. Now, truth is certainly an ideal which you have to reach, but not truth as the mind conceives it. That's the whole point. Okay, it's a glimmer of a light. Even your mental idea of truth and justice and kindness and compassion, all these things are also, they are a glimmer of light. They are not the full light, but just glimmer. Glimmer, a faint and temporary flash of light, and also a very dull light, and power that are part of a yet unreached divine nature. Morality does not reach the divine nature. But the mental idea of these things is not that light, and the moral formulation of them is not that power. So, very clearly, mind is very good, mental ideas, provided you are looking downwards. But if you look upwards, it is inadequate. You have to go even further. These are only representative constructions. So, constantly uses these constructions, you must understand, and these are all mind-made, and therefore all your ideas, however noble they may be, however perfect they may be to their mental level, they are only constructions, and man has to break those constructions and go beyond. When a house is a construction, and when after 100 years or 200 years it becomes started dilapidated, you have to break it and go beyond and build a new one. So, exactly the same thing. All ideas, mental ideals, you have to go beyond them. Yes. These are only representative constructions. They are representative constructions. The word representative also, you must be very clear. A photograph is a representation of the reality which has been photographed. There is a big difference between Tarika and a photograph of Tarika. So, these are all representations only. They are photographs. They are different. They are limited editions. And behind the inadequate that there is a glimmer of light and power that are part of the unreached divine nature. But the mental idea of these things is not that light, and the moral formulation of them is not that power. These are only representative constructions of the mind that cannot embody the divine spirit, which they vainly endeavor to imprison in their categorical formulas. Truth cannot be categorical. It has to be all-inclusive. That's the whole point. Categorical, very definitely you are giving a formula. Okay? Do not tell lies. Do not kill ever anybody. Both these things are only relative truths. It depends more on not the telling of the lie, but the attitude with which you are saying it. Okay? Even a lie can be told with a good attitude, with a benevolent attitude, and the truth also can be said with a very nefarious and a very negative attitude. Okay, you want to put somebody in trouble, you can use truth also. So these are all very relative formulas in the mind. Okay? Beyond the mental and moral being in us, there is a greater divine being that is spiritual and supermental. So spiritual is level 2, supermental is level 3. Okay? For it is only through a large spiritual being where mind's formulas dissolve in a white flame of direct inner experience. It's not about constructions. You are actually participating. You are seeing and hearing. Sometimes you can also hear. You can even feel and touch the truth. Okay? He has described that very clearly. There are certain senses and there are gross senses. The gross senses, the physical senses, are very limited representations. But your subtle senses can actually touch the truth, you can see the truth. Sometimes even you hear the truth. Srimad was able to hear, very often he used to hear. Yeah? Several times he heard Sri Krishna's voice telling him very clearly what to do and what not to do. Okay? In a white flame of direct inner experience that we can reach beyond mind. No, level 2 is beyond the mind. You don't think anymore. There's no logic. And pass from its constructions to the vastness and freedom of the supramental realities. So, very clearly, he is giving you the 3 levels. Level 1, you are ignorant and you are trying your best and you do it through morality. Level 2, the spiritual planes of consciousness, where you are much, much better off than level 1 with your ignorance and your ego and your desires. But in level 2, also is not the full truth. You go to the 3rd level, that's full truth. There alone, now he is saying there alone, where supramental realities. 3, 4 times he is repeating there alone. What happens at supramental level? There alone can we touch the harmony of the divine powers that are poorly misrepresented to our mind and framed in a false figure by the conflicting or wavering elements of the moral law. So, he is saying the harmony of divine powers. So, we spoke about the power of discipline and the power of freedom. Okay. At our level, they can never be harmonized. They are opposites. But in the spiritual field, they are not opposites at all. They become absolutely harmonious. Both are very understandable and both are cooperating with each other. This way, spontaneously you live the freedom and yet you are following a law, which is not an imposition on you. That's all. Laws are always impositions on the individual. You are asked to do something from outside, not from inside. Not your own. You are not doing that. But in the supramental level, your freedom itself will tell you what to do and what not to do in a most disciplined manner. So that's the difference. In the lower levels, the discipline is being imposed on you from outside. And that is the reason why discipline when imposed by yourself, on yourself, is the most effective. May not be always very effective, but it's definitely more effective than a discipline which is imposed on you from outside. Okay? There's always some elements who will revolt. There alone, okay, can we touch the harmony of the divine powers that are poorly misrepresented to our mind and framed into a false figure by the conflicting and wavering elements of the moral law. Conflicting and wavering elements, let's now be discussed. The moralities. The dualities. Okay. As I said, freedom and discipline. Okay. The love and justice, they are also conflicting elements. There alone, the second there alone, the unification of the transformed vital and physical and the illumined mental man become possible in the supramental spirit, which is at once the secret source and goal of our mind and life and body. What is meaning here is that at our level, our mind, our life, and our body, okay, they are constantly at war with each other. You don't think of it in that way because you take it as a very natural phenomenon. But what your vital wants or does not want, the mind doesn't always agree with it. Okay? The mind does not agree always with it, nor the body. Okay? The body wants to sleep, but you tell yourself that no, you have got this work to do, I can't sleep. There's a difference of decision and opinion all through. They are constantly in war with each other. But in the supermind, they become absolutely harmonious with each other. That's what we are saying. Then, third, there alone. There alone, is there any possibility of an absolute justice, law, and right? In our physical world, the justice that we do, Srivendra says, they said in the previous para, is very often a very gross injustice. Okay? A person is imprisoned for a murder that he didn't commit, and after 40 years you come to know that he has not done it, somebody else has done it. So, what about the injustice to him? But you think you have done justice, but it is actually injustice to him. So that's very meaning. Okay? Then the last, there alone can there be a reconciliation of the conflict between our members. Our members are body, mind, life. So that's what he's saying. We become absolutely harmonious with each other. There is perfect peace and harmony inside your being. So 8:27. We have got some time. We'll read the next para also. In other words, I laid stress on some words like constructions. Okay, we have to understand what is the meaning behind them. That's why we have to constructions and erections. Okay, Srivendra often uses that, so that's why it's better to have a clear idea of what he's saying. So we read the next one. In other words, there is above society's external law. So who will read?
Shall I read?
Yes, Sumki. Sorry, Yasmin. Sorry, Yasmin, you can read. Quick. We have to finish.
There is above society's external law and man's moral law, and beyond them, though feebly and ignorantly, aimed at by something within them, a larger truth of a vast unbound consciousness, a law divine towards which both these blind and gross formulations are progressive faltering steps that try to escape from the natural law of the animal to a more exalted light or universal rule. That divine standard, since the Godhead in us is our spirit moving towards its own concealed perfection, must be a supreme spiritual law and truth of our nature. Again, as we are embodied beings in the world with a common existence and nature, and yet individual souls capable of direct touch with the transcendent, this supreme truth of ourselves must have a double character. It must be a law and truth that discovers the perfect movement, harmony, rhythm of a great spiritualized collective life and determines perfectly our relations with each being and all beings in nature's varied oneness. It must be at the same time a law and truth that discovers to us at each moment the rhythm and exact steps of the direct expression of the divine in the soul, mind, life, body of the individual creature. And we find in experience with this supreme light and force of action, in its highest expression, is at once an imperative law and an absolute freedom. It is an imperative law because it governs by immutable truth our every inner and outer movement. And yet, at each moment and in each movement, the absolute freedom of the Supreme handles the perfect plasticity of our consciousness and liberated nature.
Conscious and liberated. So he has given only an example of the law and freedom. We become absolute. But all the dualities in the physical world get resolved into a perfect harmony. That's what he's saying. So we still have about 10 minutes, so we'll finish this paragraph. Okay? In other words, just 1 second. I lost it. Yeah. In other words, whatever he has said now, there is above society's external law and man's moral law and beyond them, though feebly and ignorantly aimed at by something within them, a larger truth of a vast unbound consciousness, a law divine towards which both these blind and gross formulations are progressive, faltering steps that try to escape from the natural law of the animal to a more exalted light and universal good. These, let's look at what he's saying. In other words, there is above society's external law. Society's external law, law number 2, the second one. The first one is the needs and desires of the collectivity and the individual. And the second law is society imposes certain laws on you. Okay? You must pay your taxes, you must have harmony in the town, you must obey the laws, you must obey traffic rules. Okay, these are all society's external laws. Nothing moral about that. They are all very, very practical things. You can't do this, you can't do that. And so, above the society's second law and third law, man's moral law, and beyond them, there is a fourth law, which is a divine law, though feebly and ignorantly aimed at by something within them. So, there is the fourth law of the divine is there everywhere. It's there even in a stone. So, therefore, it's bound to be there in the level 1, level 2, and level 3. That's what he's saying. Okay? Man's moral law and beyond them, though feebly and ignorantly aimed at. We sometimes feel that yes, there is a divine, but you know nothing about him. So that's why feebly and ignorantly aimed at by something within them. Within whom? The 3 other laws beyond, below. Though feebly and ignorantly aimed at by something within them, a larger truth of a vast, unbound consciousness. The mental laws are all bound consciousness, their construction, their limitations. A law divine towards which both these blind and gross formulations are progressive, faltering steps. Standard number
Ranga,
1. Yes, tell me.
does this refer to the religions of the world?
No,
Blind and gross formulations?
Moral. He is talking about the moral, and also, after all, religions are very often moral. Yes, there's a correlation. He's not talking directly of religions, but he's talking of the laws that religions make. That's right. You can say that. But the importance he is giving to the moral, because the moral can be religious or non-religious also. No? So that's why.
Yes, no, but because it is progressive faltering towards exalted or universal truth. That's why I asked.
That's right. So from that point of view, he is saying what you are saying is right. That is, religion also falls in this category. But he is speaking of something more than religion. As I said, moral law can be even outside. Those who are not religious, they still have to obey the moral laws. No? So that's it. That's right. A larger truth of vast and unbound consciousness, a law divine toward which both these blind and gross formulations are progressive faltering steps that try to escape from the natural law of the animal. Level 1, natural law of the animal to a more exalted light and universal rule, morality. Okay? So he's jumping, he's not now using the social law. Natural law of the animal is conduct number 1. More exalted light and universal rule, conduct number 3, moral. That divine standard, since the Godhead in us is our spirit moving towards its own concealed perfection, must be a supreme spiritual law and truth of our nature. That divine standard, the Godhead in us, which is the Godhead in you, the psychic being. But also there is a divine presence in everything. So the psychic being is not there in a stone, but the divine presence is there in a stone. And the divine presence is there in you also. But it takes the form of a psychic being. That divine standard, we have read that, supreme moral, supreme spiritual law and truth of our nature. Again, as we are embodied beings, we have a body. And if you don't have a body, if you come out of your body, you are in the spiritual plane of consciousness. So Sri is saying, so long as you are in the body, again as we are embodied beings in the world, with a common existence and nature, and yet individual souls, capable of direct touch with the transcendental. This supreme truth of ourselves must have a double character. So what's the double character? It must be a law and truth that discovers the perfect movement, harmony, rhythm of a great spiritualized collective life and determines perfectly our relations with each being and all beings in nature's varied oneness. Look at the phrase varied oneness. There is a oneness, but there is a variation also. There is freedom and there is also a law of oneness. Okay? So it's very interesting. You think about it carefully. Now, I'm reading that sentence again. It must be a law and truth. Law means there is a fixed procedure. A law is a fixed procedure and truth that discovers the perfect movement, harmony, rhythm of a great spiritualized collective life. So I told you in the previous sentence that we are individual souls, but we also live in society. And that's where the second law, social law, comes in. So we have to discipline ourselves and obey the social law. That's why double character is this one, individual as well as collective. Okay? It must be a law and truth that discovers the perfect movement, harmony, rhythm of a great spiritualized collective life and determines perfectly our relations with each being and all beings in nature varied oneness. Note interestingly that yoga in India for a long, long time was an individual person. It was an individual discipline. But now with Sri Aurobindo idea is different. He is saying that there should be also something in the collectivity. Why should the individual only reach perfection? Why should the collectivity also not reach perfection? This is very typical Sri Aurobindonian departure from the traditional wisdom. Okay? He is going and he is giving something much more. Everybody, there should be a universal progress. Okay? And you have to go. So collective as well as individual. He repeats this idea in many, many places. Okay? Because remember, he is not, the others are wanting to run away from the physical world. But he doesn't want to run away from the physical world. He wants perfection in the physical world, and that naturally includes the society. So that's why it's a logical conclusion that you have to also have a perfect society. And there is a footnote, but I'll read that footnote after the next sentence. It must be at the same time a law and truth that discovers to us, okay, that discovers to us at each moment the rhythm and exact steps of the direct expression of the divine in soul, mind, life, body of the individual creature. Now, we read that footnote. Okay? Therefore, the Gita defines dharma, an expression which means more than either religion or morality. What is dharma? An action controlled by our essential manner of self-being. The word essential manner of self-being, you can use the word svabhava. Every soul has got its own individual nature. Don't think that because it is divine, everybody is the same. No. The divine is one, but it can also be the many. Everybody has got his own divine nature. The divine is not limited to only one thing. It is infinite. So there are infinite natures also and infinite characteristics. So that the dharma is a word that comes from dri, to hold. So at whatever level you are, there is dharma which is valid. There is a dharma which is valid at the level 1, there is dharma valid at level 2, level 3 and level 4. But in level 4, that law is also freedom. That's an interesting part. Yes. That's what it is. So, and we find in experience that this supreme light and force of action, in its highest expression, is at once an imperative law and an absolute freedom. Now that's very interesting. It's difficult for the human being to understand how it can be freedom and law at the same time. Because the freedom, the divine is free. Nobody is imposing anything on him. But he sees that every manifestation, there is a process of which it has to be done. And that process is the law. Okay? You have to go along this line. But that doesn't mean to say that there cannot be another process. The physical earth, our earth, is subjected to a certain involution and evolution. But that doesn't mean to say that the divine creation somewhere else in some other universe will have the same laws. It may be quite different. So it is freedom. The divine can freely impose. And he may impose another process in creating another universe. So that is again the process, the law and the freedom are consistent with each other. It is an imperative law because it governs by immutable truth our every inner and outer movement. Now, immutable truth doesn't mean rigidity. Huh? Immutable means it is all comprehensive. It's a vast, infinite truth. Immutable doesn't mean to say, normally we understand by the word immutable, cannot be mutated, cannot be changed. But that's not the way to interpret this. Immutable is one truth is there, but it is infinite. Okay? That's the thing. All our inner and outer movement. And yet, at each moment and in each movement, the absolute freedom of the Supreme handles the perfect plasticity of our conscious and liberated nature. So, when you are liberated, no more limits and laws laid down on you. You become absolutely liberated and you are free from all laws. Okay? We stop here today. Next time we go to the ethical idealist. What the problem with the morality is, he'll still go on discussing that. The ethical idealist, the moral man. Okay? So, okay, I've crossed the limit by 3 minutes. So, we stop here today. And I'm wishing all of you a very happy day. Merci beaucoup, everybody.
Bonjour, merci
Thank you, Ranganath.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Happy Teachers Day too. We wish you a happy Teachers Day today.
Oh, great. I do the same. I wish everybody the same. Okay.